There has been a lot of enthusiasm since the beginning of the fourth quarter with Bitcoin reaching all-time highs, but you are still seeing a Google Trends displaying something that is contrary to what you would expect. Regardless of whether you are looking at XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, cryptocurrencies, or any other sort of cryptocurrency, you are seeing a very similar chart displaying, and we are not even close to where we were before. This is really telling because it reveals where the interest is actually at the moment. The month of July, and clearly around the end of the previous year, everyone who owns XRP is cordially invited to return to the CryptoZX channel. We are grateful for all the affection. As we are about to enter the morning of Saturday, October 4th, let's get right into today's report and see what's going on as we are about to enter the weekend. The overall market appears to be doing really well at the moment. The overall market is experiencing an incredible amount of love, despite the fact that there are a few coins that are seeing a slight decline. However, in the larger scheme of things, the overall market is experiencing an astonishing amount of love. Additional piece price of 3.02s, which is a decrease of 0.1% in USD and 2.2% in Bitcoin comparative valuation, which is currently resting at $181.2 billion. And the trading volume for the 24-hour period is $6 billion. Now, however, let's talk about the latest update and find out what's going on. It is possible that I have already mentioned the disclaimer, but let us reiterate it now. As usual, I would like to make a little disclaimer. This channel does not provide any kind of legal or financial advice. If you are considering investing in cryptocurrency, you should always conduct your own research and due diligence. It is for this reason that it is essential to conduct your own independent research. Also, if you have not already done so, please follow me on X by clicking on the link that is provided in the description box below. Also, take a look at what Quentin has to say. In order for me to begin using X more frequently, you should follow me and make sure that you are following me on there. It is clear that CNBC believes that Bitcoin could reach significantly higher levels during the next 3 months. However, if we take a look at what Quentin has to say, I believe that the top is closer than we think it is. CNBC is doing TA on Bitcoin, and absolutely, without a doubt, 100%, I concur. As soon as you see CNBC conducting technical analysis on live air, discussing Bitcoin, and expressing extreme optimism over the cryptocurrency, you will know that the peak is drawing near. To tell you the truth, we are actually getting closer to the end of the market cycle than we are to the beginning of the cycle for the time being. Also, I couldn't agree more. I believe that we are moving closer and closer to the top of the Bitcoin market. If you are thinking that it will be within the next 8 or 9 months, I can assure you that it is going to be the exact opposite of what you are counting on. I believe that we are looking somewhere and that this year ought to be the high before we see a regression, or perhaps we will see a fake out the next year. On the other hand, that is merely my impression. In addition, it is evident that I am based it on what we have all witnessed in the past. On the other hand, let's take a more in-depth look and see what's going on. You should be aware that US spot ETFs reported very large inflows. ETFs for Bitcoin were worth $985 million, while ETFs for Ethereum were worth $233 million. Obviously, it is really pleasing to observe that there are so many wonderful inflows coming in. In addition, I would like to bring this to your attention. Once more, you should be aware that we have discussed the 4-year cycle. The 4-year cycle is something that I continue to believe that the price of Bitcoin will exhibit some degree of pullback. Nevertheless, I simply do not believe that this will occur. We were not going to witness retracements as extreme as those that we have witnessed in the past, particularly now that significant institutions are joining the movement. I have a personal opinion on that. I would appreciate it if you could let me know in the comments section below. But I believe that the bear market is still going to have a significant impact on 95% of the whole market. I believe that this number is much higher than 95%. Guys, take a look at the alternative cryptocurrencies. There are significant examples of alternative cryptocurrencies available. You can pick them up with your bare hands, and these were the ones that were traced substantially even while the market was trending upward. You are correct, the market is still in a bullish state. I am aware that most people do not believe it, but the truth is that we are still in a bull market. Nevertheless, have a look at this. It is important to keep in mind that the SEC did not specifically recommend ethereum additional PETF. The deadline had been reached and the SEC had not yet decided whether or not to authorize the listing. However, it is essential that we keep in mind that the shutdown is having an impact on the approvals of ETFs. Pay attention to what transpired with Litecoin. We were unable to hear anything. And it kind of goes back to what Eleanor said 2 to 3 days ago, telling her that she has been told that they are halting it until obviously, the operations are back and the government is back up and running. When it comes to these exchange-traded funds, ETFs, they are going to focus their attention on this particular area. As of right now, they are on hold regardless of whether the days have passed. Whether the dates have passed. We haven't really heard anything for this, and we haven't heard anything for the exchange-traded fund, ETF, for Litecoin, specifically Litecoin because that was the one that had a deadline of October 2nd and not the ethereum one. However, you are aware that the new listing standards are coming into effect, and people are concentrating on that. Perhaps the dates will change. Please share your ideas with me in the comments section, but before you do so, do take a look at what Vincent has to say. In the process of XRPL's institutional unlock, the last few parts are beginning to come together. Prior to the implementation of native compliance, large institutions would not handle public chains. On XRPL, the mystery is almost completely resolved. When it comes to identity, we already have AMM, RLUSD, and on-chain credentials established. The next phase is permission domains, which provide issuers with the ability to restrict flows to wallets that have also been KYC validated. Right at that moment, actual institutional funds are able to move. Having a wallet that is linked to a verifiable identity is necessary for KYC AML CTF. There are now stablecoin regulated assets available such as RLUSD. There is still a need for AMM liquidity pools, which are just getting ready for scale. On the chain, authorization decks in addition to an active KYC provider. Once they are activated, XRPL will transition from retail rails to institutional-grade settlement, which will result in the movement of billions of dollars. People are unable to comprehend the XRP token, or more specifically, they are unable to comprehend what the XRP token is. In the context of the XRPL ledger, it is a native token. Furthermore, it serves as the provider of liquidity, as some of you may already be aware. Additionally, it is evident that it is BU. And over time, as you may know, over time, XRP coins, please accept my apologies. It is a bridge asset and it will be burned over time. Therefore, once you observe billions of dollars moving into, the SEC received more than 30 exchange-traded funds, ETFs, tied to cryptocurrency this afternoon. Despite the fact that the government is closed, you are still able to submit your application. This is just the beginning. Over the following few months, the SEC will receive applications for each cryptocurrency exchange-traded fund, ETF, that you can possibly imagine. None of you are aware of what is going to happen. And as I've mentioned to you guys in the past, you're going to experience this as the norm in the future. As a result, we are beginning to observe that happening. There is a departure from Link ETF, No, LTC, Rex, and Hospray. Adam, you are seeing a lot of different assets, which is crazy right now, but you are seeing them. There is a VTF staking in addition to staking to Crow.ena for each bar hype, and you guys are getting the concept. Therefore, we are going to witness a huge variety of various exchange-traded funds, ETFs, going live, which is going to be extremely exciting to observe. However, the CME, September 288 billion total, 8.7 billion, XRP, 1.3 billion in open interest as of today, are really big numbers that people tend to overlook. As far as the domination is concerned, however, let us take a more in-depth look at the situation and see what is happening with the pricing. It is apparent that it is acquiring a great deal of momentum. There is a clear increase of 59.50% from where we were the previous evening. Bitcoin is another factor that is contributing to this phenomenon because, as I mentioned before, Bitcoin did a retest. When it reaches 124,000, it is very close to reaching its all-time high. The day before yesterday, we retested. I noticed that there was a slight retracement, but it is clear that things are beginning to pick up and return to where we were before. In addition, I believe that the way that BTC OEN is currently holding is a very strong probability, despite the fact that we are currently in the weekend. An all-time high could very well be retested this coming weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Despite the fact that Bitcoin is looking fantastic, you should be aware that its dominance is increasing slightly. As a result, the overall market, which includes XRP, is experiencing a slight delay as a result of this particular factor. It is possible for you to observe this for yourself if you are now looking at XRP throughout the course of the past hour, because indeed we did make 2 separate trips to the 310 in order to get there. A little over 24 hours ago, we first became aware of it. However, we were once again met with a denial.